Welcome to London Chess Conference. Thank you very much to all people who is joining our session today. As we have very important topic to discuss today, it's online tournaments. It's a really whole new world of opportunities and challenges for us because as all you know, we have a difficult situation with pandemic this year, and the all chess community start to work in a way how to survive in this situation. And but what we see during this year is that online play is becoming super popular and essential. It's become a key to keep players and communities connected. It's become an opportunity to continue some annual historical events during pandemic, and online chess platforming are improving at an incredible rate. We will discuss a lot of topics today, and we have two very interesting people to introduce you this topic. It's Asia first and only one female category A international arbiter and FIDE lecturer, chief arbiter of the 2020 Women's World Chess Championship, Chancellor of FIDE Arbiter Commission, Woman FIDE Master and International Arbiter, Ms. Shohreh Bayat from England, and full-time employee at the oldest chess club in USA, the Mechanics Chess Club, part of the online play task forces for US Chess, developed US Chess online play rules, 2017 Organizer of the Year by US Chess, organizers and directs tournaments every week. FIDE Arbiter Dr. Judit Sztaray from USA.
Thank you.
How we are going to work today? We will speak a lot of about a lot of topics, and very important matter how to design your event. What kind of equipment needs to organizers and players? We will speak about playing area for players, physical and virtual. We will compare online platform, of course. We will speak about how to set up your event, which platform is better for you, and what kind of tournaments and type of tournaments is better for you. We will speak about online arbiters, about their duties, staffing needs, and other matters. A very important topic, as I believe, it's fair play measure. As all you know, now we have a FIDE Congress, and I attend Fair Play Commission during this week. It's really, really important to discuss this as well. Sometimes we have difficulties how to read the reports of Fair Play Commission. So we will learn a little bit about this. And after this, we will have some discussion, questions. You can ask your questions and give your opinions. What is your vision about online chess and online arbitrage? So, Judit and Shohreh, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Anastasia. And it's a great pleasure to be here, especially when the host is Anastasia. Thank you, everyone. And also, I would like to thank Judith for having this opportunity for me to work with her. I would like to ask Judith to start today's session.
Thank you, everyone, too. I'm very excited to be here, and Sztaray and I had so much fun preparing these slides for you. So hopefully you will enjoy it. We wanted to go back and really discuss the core of the online events and really take a look at what type of online events do you do? These online events can be small events, scholastic or regular small events, club events just for your players. They can be regional, state or national events, all the way to up to international events. As you can see, we listed it in the order of importance, in the order of significance, what's at stake at your tournament. You always have to consider when you consider what kind of regulations, requirements do you want to list for your events and do you require from your players, you always have to consider what's at stake. Are there any prize fund, money prizes? Are there any titles at stake, or just the fame? Do you know your players? Do you know your club players as a small club event, or is it an international event where you get players from all over the world and you might not know them in person, everyone? Once you can think through these and determine what online events, what type of the online events you're planning, you can also decide what kind of format will work for your event and what kind of staffing and requirements should be decided for that event. For example, time control, a number of rounds. This determine how many days can you hold the event, and really just how many, what's at stake. This requires, the higher the stake, the tighter the ship, your ship has to be, the tighter the requirements. Then we go to the requirements. Next slide. So for requirements, you have to think of both the players and the organizers. Players, obviously, they need to have all kinds of really trivial things, right? Computer, reliable internet. Or you have to decide whether you require a web camera for monitoring or not. And if yes, how many web cameras? Lighting is also very important. If you require web cameras, you have to see the players. So you have to make sure that they have enough lighting. Functional microphones so you can see, hear their background, as well as functional speakers. These are all requirements that you have to think about it and advertise it in advance. In the organizer part, you also have to think of a little bit extra. Obviously, you have to have a Zoom account to be able to host the web cameras and or similar online meeting platforms. You need to have Swiss manager and chess result or equivalent, especially if you manually pair the tournament and manually start the games. And Sztaray will talk about that, how to do that. If you have an automatic tournament, that's a little bit easier and you don't necessarily need a Swiss manager, but if you run an online bigger tournament, you need to have those. And very important for organizers to make sure that the staff can communicate with each other. We always think about how the players and the organizers communicate, or players and TDs communicate, but we also need to make sure that the organizers, the staff, how they communicate between each other. So you have to have some of those platforms, Slack, Discord, or WhatsApp, or equivalent. Next, we would like to discuss the playing areas. And this is, again, you have to think of two playing areas. You have to think about the physical playing area that's around us in the room, and the virtual playing area that's online on the player's computer and the platform. Obviously, the physical area should be clear of electronic devices. You should specify whether you allow any other electronic devices or not. Mostly you don't want their phone and other electronic devices in there. You also have to specify whether you allow other person inside the room or not. And if a team is playing, whether they are allowed to play in the same location or not, and this should be disclosed to the arbiter in advance. This is very important. And also the bathroom break should be clearly specified, whether the players are allowed to leave the camera during the run of the play or they have to stay in the camera throughout the duration of the game. Most tournaments that I have experience with allow players to leave in the first 10 minutes, 15 minutes, but not after that. But some stricter tournaments, they don't allow that at all. The virtual playing area is your computer or the player's computer. You have to make sure that you tell your players no other software can run on the computer while they play, and the platform, the web browser, should only have one tab open. That's your tournament tab, your tournament platform tab. And Sztaray will discuss how to instruct your players to put the volume to 0, the output volume to 0, and your microphone turned on. And with this, I would like to turn the microphone over to Sztaray, who will talk about the platforms and their differences.
Thank you so much, Judith. At this stage, we are going to talk about main platforms, their features and differences. And as you know, most popular platforms are chess.com, Lichess, Tornello, and Chess24. We are going to discuss about commands on chess.com, pre-move in different platforms, also about clock, about Berserk, which belongs to Lichess, about how to contact arbiters, draw claims, and draw by insufficient materials, as long as other topics. Here you see a picture of chess.com website. I'm sure all of you are familiar with chess.com website, but we bold some parts for you because these are very important for arbiters. You can see the live section at the top because normally arbiters don't go to the main page. We go to the chess.com/live, and we expect players to be on chess.com/live as well. Otherwise, you cannot start their games. So for any tournament that you are organizing or you are arbiter, it's important to ask players to be on the live section. Another part that we highlighted is settings, because players can apply their preferable settings there, whatever they want, like about pre-move, about other things. And the third important part in chess.com is chat section. That might come a surprise for you, but chat section is very important for arbiters in chess.com. Why? Because in chess.com we have some commands that we can apply in the chat section and then start games or apply time penalties or having Armageddon games. All of them is through chat section. And also if you want to watch games, you can do that again through chat section. For being arbiter in chess.com website, actually the platform needs to give you the access to be arbiter there. When you have this access, these commands will be available for you. And in the chat section, if you want to start a game, you can simply type the formula that we wrote for you here. The formula is a /match username. Okay, instead of username A, you need to type username of white player. And instead of username B, you need to type username of the black player. And then you have minutes and increments. So it's about time control. You cannot have different time controls for both players. It's only possible to have one time control for both players. And because of that, for example, if the time control is 3 minutes plus 2 seconds, you write 3 for minutes and 2 instead of increment. And then we have two parts, protected PCL. Normally we keep it as a fixed part, but I'm going to explain you what is that. I wrote an example here for you. So the example is the /match. Shohreh Bayat is my ID. And here I wrote you Judit's ID as well. And this time control is 5 minutes plus 2 seconds increment for both players. And you have these fixed parts as well. But what is this fixed part? Protected means that it removes auto abort function, which is very helpful actually. And also if a player gets disconnected, the player can come back to the game as long as there is time on the clock. And about PCL, it also shows if you type this in the formula, then the real name of the players, if they put it on their profile, will be appeared when they are playing. I told you that it's not possible to have different time controls for both players, but for Armageddon tournaments, we have different time control for both players. What to do in such cases? You can actually add or reduce time on the clock of the players. We have another formula here for that we wrote it here. Slash W time, you can have it plus or minus here, and then minute. What does it mean? This formula is for clock of white player. So for example, if you type in the chat section slash W time -2, it removes 2 minutes from white clock. Or if you type slash W time +2, it adds 2 minutes to the white clock. And for black, you can just type a slash B time, and then you can have +1 minute, +2 minutes, whatever you have, or minus for reducing time. So you can use it for Armageddon games as well. You set it as the first formula, and then you type this formula to add 1 minute, to remove 1 minute from black. And then we have the third formula for watching games. I believe that it doesn't need any function from chess.com to apply it for you as an arbiter, because it's automatically applied for all users, as long as I know. So even if you don't have a special access, you can just type this formula to follow a special game. But the condition is that the player must be on the live section and the game should be in progress. So as long as the game is progress, if you type, for example, slash follow Shohreh Bayat, if I'm playing, you can watch my game. And now I'm going to talk about pre-move, which is different in platforms. You know that pre-move is very popular, especially in blitz and bullet chess. The difference between platforms is that in chess.com, you can have 5 pre-moves in a row. So you can do pre-move your next 5 moves. But this is not the same in Lichess or Chess24. For example, in Lichess and Chess24, you can do only 1 pre-move in advance. And if you try to do it more, then the first pre-move will be cancelled. In Tornello, there is no pre-move yet, so it is not possible to do pre-move, but they are discussing to add it soon. About clock also, there are different functions based on platforms. For example, in chess.com, clock starts as long as games start. It doesn't need to make any move. It's like real chess. In over the board, we start the clock and then players make their moves. But in other platforms, it's not same. For example, in Lichess, you can in Lichess and Chess24, actually clock starts after making the first move by both players. So even if white makes its first move, for example, in Lichess, clock still is not working. It starts working after black makes its move as well. In Tornello, it's different and it's a manual setting. We add a picture from Tornello website here for you to know that how the setting is. And you see that there is a checkbox that you can press, and it says player can start clock before the first move. So in Tornello, many things is manual. You can decide what kind of settings would you like. Then we have a special feature which belongs to Lichess. It's Berserk, and you can see this on the photo. What does it do? It reduces the time from one player and may lose half of their time on the clock. And if there is any increment, also increment will be disappear for that player as well. So it's an optional by a player to decide to reduce his time deliberately in order to play faster, to make game faster, for example. And players normally use it when they are playing against weaker opponents, for example. For example, if you have a grandmaster playing against a weak opponent, the grandmaster may decide to win this game, try to win the game faster. So he or she might try to reduce his time deliberately. So every time that they press it, it actually should be pressed before making any move. You cannot decide to do it at the middle of the tournament. So before making any move, this option is activated. Now, for example, black can press it and then to reduce its time by half. But there is an exception. If the time is 1 minute plus 2 seconds, then this option will be applicable, like to make it only 1 minute without any increment. But for all other tie breaks, it just for all other time controls, it just reduce the time by half. Just for one player, not for both players. So the previous one was for leeches. Now we are going to talk about the special feature for Tornello. Actually, in Tornello, there is a section called Arbiters. So player can decide to call arbiters during the game when they need arbiters' help. And you see that here, they can just press it and then arbiter can join to the game and help to the players. I'm showing you in the next slide. After pressing this, this will happen. So the game will be paused automatically, and the arbiter can communicate with the player through chat section. We wrote some example for you here. For example, white player is asking for help through the arbiter, and the arbiter can answer by chat section. And also then some options will be applicable when player calls arbiter. Arbiter can have this option to end the call, to resume the game, to declare the game draw, to undo move, or to adjust clock. All of them are applicable. In Tornello, adjusting clocks is not like chess.com. In chess.com, we said that everything is like based on commands, but in Tornello, it's different. So the arbiter can just press adjust clock here, and then this will happen. Then arbiter can just add time or reduce time from the player. Another topic is about draw claims and offer in different platforms. In most platforms, it's actually automatic draw. So players don't need to apply any claim for 3-fold repetition or for 5 moves rule. And in such cases, so for 50 move rule, so naturally there is no 5 times occurrence or 75 move rule as well, because after 3 times occurrence or 50 moves rule, then it will be automatic draw. But in Tornello, it's different. In Tornello, it is again the option in the setting that you can decide to apply before the tournament to make it automatic, or to let players claim for draws through call of arbiters. So this is the difference between Tornello with other platforms. And then here in the next slide, it's about draw by insufficient material in chess.com. In chess.com, there is a different rule regarding draw by insufficient materials, which is different from FIDE rules. For example, I add one possession from my game, which I deliberately created this possession with one of my friends to test the platform. It was from December 2019, and in this possession, I waited. I was white. If I had to make any move, then I would be mated in the next move, because after a7 and knight b6, it's a forced mate. But I decided to not making any move to test the platform, and I waited to be flagged, and after that the game was draw. The result became draw. It's because of special rules that is applicable in chess.com. But in normal chess and in FIDE events, it shouldn't be like that because FIDE rules is different. And as long as there is a possibility of mate for one player, the player win the game if the opponent's flag falls. There are some other positions that we wrote for you here. There are some other exceptions. For example, opposite colors bishop mate is always possible, but in chess.com it's a draw. And at this point, I'm going to ask Judith to continue with the next slide, please. You are muted.
Thank you so much, Sztaray. Yes, I was answering everyone, so I didn't want you guys to hear my typing. So let's talk about how to staff the events, the online events, which is quite unique and a little bit different than over-the-board events. So when you as an organizer decide what kind of events are you running and what kind of requirements will you be having for the players, Zoom monitoring or not, and how many, what are the requirements, you need to think about the different arbiters and how to staff your events. Every tournament has to have a chief arbiter. This arbiter is fully responsible for the event and responsible for the appropriate staffing and monitoring of the online tournament in whole. So if any problem, the chief arbiter is the final person who's responsible for everything. Chief arbiter often has a deputy chief arbiter who helps with the supervision of the other arbiters and assists the chief arbiters with anything else. Obviously, if you have a smaller tournament, you might not have a chief arbiter, or you designate one of your Zoom arbiters as a chief arbiter. Who are the Zoom arbiters? If you decide that your players will need webcam monitoring, you would like to monitor them while they are playing their online game, you need to have Zoom arbiters, Zoom TDs, tournament directors to monitor the players. What do these arbiters do? They assist the players to set up their cameras. They set up the Zoom meeting itself, and they ensure that the monitoring is sufficient, and they actively monitor the players during the game. That means not only when they start, but throughout the whole duration of the game. And they oftentimes monitor their games as well. So most of the Zoom TDs have multiple screens. One screen shows their Zoom meeting with all the web cameras, and the other screen shows all the games. And so you can correlate the players' behavior with their games, and you know where they are at the game and how much time they spend on each move and things like that. All this is for ensuring that fair play is followed throughout the tournament, because ultimately your whole goal with this Zoom monitoring, webcam monitoring, is to reduce the fair play violations and have a clean tournament. There's a category of arbiters called pool arbiters. They help the team captains regarding team compositions. They handle all technical issues for the group. They download team compositions from chess result and upload the result of the games. These arbiters help the Zoom and the chief and the deputy chief arbiters as well. And finally, a very important role is the fair play officer. Again, if you have a smaller tournament, you might be the chief arbiter and the fair play officer. But if you have a big tournament, it's very important to have a dedicated fair play officer. This tournament and this arbiter collects and prepare all the PGN files for submission to Professor Ken Regan, because you need to have one big file of PGNs with updated ratings, FIDE ratings, and run numbers in order for Professor Regan to be able to run the fair play screening. They also coordinate other fair play screening, and they consult and make decision about the player if they violated fair play or not, and eventually report them to FIDE if it's needed. Let's go through what the organizers and the chief arbiters have to do before the event. There are certain things that need to be announced before the event so that when players are signing up, registering for your event, they are fully aware and they sign up with the knowledge of these requirements. So they cannot say you announce that later and they signed up for event, they weren't fully aware. Arrival time, when do they need to log into the Zoom meeting prior to the round start time? Typically, this is an hour before the first round and maybe a little bit less, 30 minutes, 15 minutes before the consecutive rounds, or it may be the same time. You have to clearly specify that. You also need to specify the technological requirements. How many web cameras do you need? What kind of microphone, or if you need a microphone and if it needs to be unmuted. And if the players are required to play from a laptop or a desktop, or if you allow mobile devices. There has been other sessions today. I've been listening to very interesting point of views about that mobile device use or not. You also need to list the playing conditions as we talked about it earlier. If you need to require a quiet room when there's only one person the player is in, you need to let the players know so that they can prepare. And the platform conditions. Oftentimes, tournaments require the players to disclose their full name, either in their username or in their full profile, and we can just push it up with the PCL function. And you need to let the players know before that. Sztaray will go into all the details about the Zoom monitoring, as she has a lot of experience with this.
There are thank you, Judith. There are some certain things that the Zoom arbiters need to do. We have a checklist actually, but first for the host of the call, he needs to enable multiple share screen and renaming participants. I will give you an example here as well. But actually, it's also possible that we ask players to rename themselves because in many tournaments you have different calls and actually breakout rooms, and you might have one arbiter per one room and you don't know players, so you might ask players to rename themselves. That's also possible. So the first thing is that you need to know how to activate multiple share screen. We gave you one example here from the photo, how to activate multiple share screen. And then we have this checklist for Zoom arbiters to do what? About camera, they must check that all cameras must be on. Virtual backgrounds must be off. No player is allowed to have virtual background. Microphone is normally should be on because there is a meaningful difference when you have microphones on and off. When it is off, we normally get some cases regarding fair play violation, but when it is on, it's very helpful to reduce these numbers. But actually, it depends on how many people you have on your Zoom call. If you have many players, it's difficult to keep all microphones on. So this is recommendation for organizers to keep a standard number of players on each Zoom call. The speaker is another important matter because we want player to listen to announcements, but on the other hand, when you have microphones on, we don't want to distract players during the game. So we should let players to mute their speakers during the game. But in some tournaments like Online Olympiad, we saw that players wanted to hear the sound of moves. And when they fully mute their microphone, they wouldn't be able to hear the sound of moves when they make a move or when the opponent make a move. For this, I put a picture here for you. If you look at this, you can on the Windows, this option is available that you just mute a sound of one program on your computer. So if you press on this sign and then press open volume mixer, the players can only mute the sound of Zoom call during the game, and then so they can keep their speaker on, but they won't be distracted by the voices on or noises on Zoom call. Another important matter is that the arbiters should check that there are no extra tab be open during the call. Actually, players shouldn't have any extra tabs open, except, of course, the platform and Zoom call, nothing more. And then headset is also important. We normally won't allow players to use headset and earpieces. So this is another thing for arbiters to check. I said that it's not possible to have extra tabs open. Sometimes you are not sure about if player is using other programs or not. In such cases, you can ask player to have a task manager check. For example, in Windows, you can ask player to press Ctrl Shift Escape, and then task manager will be open. So then you can check what programs are running on the computer. Another matter is that to make sure players are sharing their screen and not browser, because many players don't know the difference and then they just share their browsers. And if they are sharing their browsers, you cannot see about other programs and what is happening on the computer. So you need to check one by one if players are sharing their screen rather than browser. I put a picture here for you. So when player press share screen, then they should choose the screen 1. Or in other words, we can say that we should ask players to share their desktop rather than just browser.
Ensuring fair play in an online event has to be one of the main priorities for every organizer and arbiter. And there are three important parts to ensure fair play as much as we can possibly can. There are pre-event preparation that you have to think about. There are during the event and then post-event follow-ups. Pre-event, you have to see if you know your players or not. Again, I told you about if you have a small club event, we can probably not necessarily require web cameras. As for example, my club at Mechanics, we have a 50, 60 player tournament every single day, every single week, twice a week. And we don't require webcams because I single-handedly know every single player and they would not risk their reputation. But if you do require, you have to staff your event appropriately, not to overwhelm the Zoom TDs. Generally, every 40 camera per one Zoom TD is my experience. Maybe others have other experience, but anything above monitoring 30, 40 players for a Zoom TD requires extra energy from them, and there's a possibility that that Zoom TD will miss something. So don't understaff your event. Try to have additional staff ready to go and be prepared. During the event, you have to make sure that the requirement that you set up for the event are followed and correct any out of compliance. This is actually very important that I pay special attention when it comes to Zoom TDs. You have to train the Zoom TDs not to be shy, to interrupt the players, to correct a setup. It's very important because if the Zoom TDs tend to be shy, it delays and you're missing key information and important parts of the monitoring. And you have to make sure that you train your staff so that they monitor the players and the games closely. And then post-event follow-up that Sztaray will talk about, the fair play review. You have to screen the games, and that's your biggest, one of the biggest tools when it comes to fighting fair play violations. You have to, if you screen your games, those games will have numbers that will show up. You can also review the Zoom recordings along with any suspicious games or players, and together with those information, you can make a more educated decision. And very important that I always emphasize to our scholastic players, as well as the regular adult players, is that we will follow up with the consequences, follow through with the consequences. If they see that you mean what you're saying, they will less likely to cheat in their events. So Zoom arbiters, what you need to pay attention, you pay attention on eye movements, and we'll have an example in the next slide. You have to pay attention if they're looking away from the screen. Now you have to know that often chess players, they look up on the ceiling, like in Queen's Gambit, or look far away and just staring. These are natural approaches, natural behaviors, but at the same time, you might need to point that out to the players. They have to alter that a little bit, not to draw attention. Another thing, we talked about no virtual backgrounds. You currently have no idea whether I have my kids here or not. Well, you would hear them, but normally you don't require virtual background to be able to see the rest of the room. And so you comfortably can make a decision that no one is in the playing area. Also, the Zoom arbiters, when the players share their screen, they have to follow the shared screen and make sure that the players don't move their mouse out of the chessboard boundaries or too far away. They don't click on any other tab, or no additional programs are running. The next slide will show you a quick example about the eye movements. So when you focus on the game, you just focus on eye movements. And if you look away a lot of the times, then it becomes suspicious. And then together with the game data, you can make an educated decision about how to proceed. Sztaray will continue with the chessbot.
Yes, about chessbots, some players use chessbots for cheating, so you should know that how players cheat actually. Chessbots can show what is the next move to the player by making squares colorful, or there are some examples in these photos. For example, in the left photo, you can see that chessbot is showing that the player should make the move knight e5, or here also knight takes c6 is the other example that chessbot is showing. But human eyes have some limitations, so click pattern can be one of the data that some websites, some platforms collecting to catch cheaters. And also some cheaters also actually switch between tabs to check other programs. Some platforms like Lichess are capable to find this information. And now we are going to talk about fair play system, which is by Professor Ken Regan, who is himself an international master in chess and dedicated his life for to designing his system to catch cheaters, and it's a huge asset for chess actually. Professor Regan's system works based on Z-scores. Z-scores are standard deviation. It tells you how extreme the data is from the norm. For example, so you have these Z-scores as indicator for catching cheaters. For example, if you have Z bigger than 2, you should expect that once in 44 times you get this Z-score. Or if you have Z-score bigger than 3, it appears 1 in 741 times. And also for Z4, 4 we wrote here, and Z5 it's even also much bigger. So depends on the number of your participants, you can find out how many such Z-scores you can get. It's very unlikely that we have 3 million participants in one tournament. So if you get Z5, that's very dangerous. And that's very odd and impossible kind of statistically. So you know that something is going wrong there. For example, but you should know that in some platforms like Lichess, that maybe 3 million games are being played in a day. So you should expect that to give it once in a day. That's not impossible. Professor Regan's system has 2 stages. One of them is screening, and the other one is full test. Screening is quicker one, and it doesn't produce the score, but it produces something equivalent, which called ROI, which is raw outlier index. ROI is a number which should be between 0 and 100. And what does it mean? This system works based on players' rating. So if a rating of a player is, for example, 2500, and the player play exactly like his rating, that player ROI is 50. But it is possible for players to play a bit better or worse than their rating. So the normal range for a player to receive an ROI is between 40 to 60, which is a range to play worse than your rating, your level, or better than your rating. This is the normal range. But if you receive ROI more than 65 or 70 or more, you should be really worried about that player. This is suspicious. And there are also some other things that Professor Regan does for this quick test. One of them is that he normally removes 8 turns for each game, because when he receives many games, he removes this. He cannot do it manually. If he wants, can do it for one single game manually, but when he is doing loads of games per tournament, he just skips this because of the opening section. And when a player has a winning possession, for example, totally winning possession, in standard games, it can be more than 4 pawns. It's equal to 4 pawns based on engine. In such possessions, after that, he will not calculate those. And for rapid and blitz, when the advantage is 9 pawns. And yeah, this is the point about screening. And here I add one picture from, because it's easier always to explain from the report that we received. So I just put one, this is a long report, but I cut it just some parts of it. Because here you can look at the ROI that we received. For example, this player's ROI is 74, which is bigger than standard that we expect, or for this player is 74, again 70. These are high ROIs, but one thing that I want to tell you that here is this column actually shows that how many moves has been analyzed by Ken. For this game, for example, 281 move has been analyzed, and among how many games he analyzed it, 8 games in 9 rounds. So he had 8 games, and in 9 rounds he collected 281 moves out of them, and then based on them the ROI is 74.9. And how many percent match move was with the computer? 64.1% match move also with the engine. So these are the informations that you need to know. This ROI is very helpful for you, but just don't look at this individually. For example, I come here a bit down for player number 3. If you look at this, here we have rating of the player. For the first player, it was 1963, but for player number 3, it's 1000. When it is written 1000, it means that this player was unrated. And as I told you, CAN system works based on rating. We really don't know what is the actually level of the play for an unrated player. So we shouldn't just reach to the final conclusion for this player and saying that this is a cheater. Also look at the numbers, how many number of moves has been analyzed during this process. Here only 77 moves has been analyzed. I'm not saying that this is impossible to get the final conclusion with this number, but it is always safer to have at least 100 moves to reach to the conclusion. So if, for example, it is you have more rounds in your tournament, you shouldn't ban this player. You can wait and give more opportunities, more round to this player to play, and it gives you the chance to collect more data as well.
And one quick note that I just actually thought about, that why is it important before sending it to Ken Regan to update your PG and to update the real over-the-board rating versus leave the platform rating in the PGM file? It's because, exactly because what Sztaray was mentioning, that Ken's system work really strongly correlated to the player's rating. So it compares to different players' rating versus the expected performance. So it's very important to prepare your PGN files with the players over the board or more realistic rating, because some players have really off platform rating when you prepare.
Exactly, very good point, Judith. And also, I would like to mention that don't jump to the final conclusion by looking at the screening test, because there is also another full test by Ken. So if it is possible, ask him to do a full test for you. Here I add an example of full test by Ken Regan, which is a more sophisticated model. And in full test, actually Ken's system can produce a rating performance as well. And also you need to know that normally in full test he skips the turn 1 to 13. By turn I mean moves, but in fair play systems we normally call it turns. So yeah, this model is more sophisticated. It designed different Z scores actually. It can catch smart cheating as well. So if a player only plays first best move, or someone try to play second best move, some players try to play third best move, and some of them trying to be smart and just play combination of them. Ken system can actually produce the combined Z score, which is very important. If you look at this here, for example, for this player, his rating was 1748, and for this player with this rating, his Z score is 4.91, which is very big, which is impossible. But this is not the only option that we have in full test. You can also check the rating performance of this player as well. And what is the rating performance of this player? 2930. That is, I mean, that's like Magnus Carlsen, isn't it? So that's extremely fishy, and we can come to this conclusion that this player is cheating. Yeah, that was it. And because we have some more time, maybe we can collect some questions at this point, right?
Yes. So as a conclusion, we hope that you found this presentation useful, and just make sure to pay attention to the requirements, the announcements previously, pre-tournament and during the tournament, to staff and train your event appropriately, and complete the fair play review with thorough attention. Anyone has any questions?
Maybe Anastasia can collect questions.
If there is any question, please ask it. No need to write now, so you just can directly ask Shohreh or Judit if you're interested about anything, please.
Well, we had one question from Stephanie Grieve. She pointed out that basically those players who work really hard during lockdown and they gain knowledge and strength, will they be caught with these fair play measures? And I told her that statistics won't lie. If you're a human, you will play humanly. And even if you're playing more and more stronger and stronger than your original pre-pandemic rating, the statistics proves that you're human. You're not going to choose the first engine move all the time. You statistically will lose some games, and all these combined, I think, will make sure. I've seen kids who are working really hard on their chess, and they are improving, and I have no doubt that they achieve that cleanly. So.
Exactly, and there is also another point that sometimes you get, for example, Z score 3. I'm giving just this example. And you don't jump to conclusion that this player is cheating, but you can get some other data from platform if possible. For example, platforms, because they collect other data, can be some additional information to Ken's system, and then you might even ban a player with with such Z score, because you know that this player was switching between tabs in critical moments, for example, and playing good moves, or the click pattern of this player is not normal. So these are other possibilities as well. I see some questions in the chat also. Gunther is asking, are there special rules from the FIDE for online tournaments? Actually, FIDE has a task force committee, and they designed some online rules which hasn't been published yet because it needs to pass General Assembly, which is tomorrow, I think.
Yeah.
So if it passes General Assembly, Anastasia will be there also. Because she's FIDE vice president, so she she's one of the persons who need to vote for this. And yeah, if it passes, then we will have these online rules as well.
And I just want to mention that in the US, we actually had this online task force back in June. We developed our US Chess Federation has its online rules for online chess. And we had our meeting back in August. So we passed it, and every organizer who runs online rated tournaments, which CF US Chess has online ratings, online regular, online blitz, quick, and online blitz rating. When we run online rated tournaments, we have to abide those online rules. So it's very interesting, and there are some really good rules, and I'm hoping that FIDE will have a lot of similarities to our rules. We also have a question
I just want to add that, yes, yesterday during council meeting, council approved a proposal for online and hybrid chess rules, and it was developed with a Fair Play Commission, Rules Commission, Arbiters Commission. So, and I hope tomorrow General Assembly will submit it, and we will have a FIDE rules for online chess as well.
Could I just make a few comments, please, rather than a question, Anastasia? Just following up on the question about payment for Ken Regan. For the basic service, no. He's a university professor, and he wants to get as much data as possible. And this is his work because his university is supporting him. If you were ever in a situation where you needed a more detailed report, for instance, in the case of threatened legal proceedings, you might have to pay for that. On the question of fast improving players, as Judit has said, there is a limit to that. They're not going to improve to 2,900. But if you get a high suspicious figure for a youngish child in particular, then you do have to be wary of the fact that they may have been only studying chess while they couldn't go to school in the pandemic. If, for instance, they've been playing on one of the other platforms, such as chess.com or League Chess, you may be able to get a more realistic rating from their current ratings on those platforms, and then you can ask Ken Regan to rerun the test again on the basis of that rating, which could be 300 or so points higher than the original rating, and that might bring you back into the conclusion that it was a more realistic Z score and therefore not require any further action. I think
David, when we get some very suspicious players, before banning them, it's always we can go to the profile of the players, check if this is the rating of the player is matched with its level. And also Ken Regan, as far as I know, is trying to get national rating of federations as well. Some federations like US or England, for example, they have their national rating system as well, and he's trying to design his system based on national rating and international rating to collect all possible data.
That was exactly the kind of point I was making. I think you can say, please, would you rerun the test on the assumption that the player's rating is this figure, if that's what you believe is most realistic. Thank you very much. I'll let somebody else come in.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Anastasia. I just shared our email in the last slide. If anyone has further questions, you can, of course, contact us via email.
Dear friends, unfortunately, it's time for us to finish as we have just 1 hour session. I would like to thank all participants and our speakers, Judit and Shohreh, for the great presentation. It was really interesting. I learned something by myself, that I didn't know till now. So thank you. And I hope that next year we all will meet in London in offline meeting.